Thank you. Minister, before I start, can I ask you to get back to me on the issue of the CIE Regular Wages Scheme statutory instrument? 5 weeks ago, Minister Ryan told me it would be signed within 2 weeks. There are thousands of workers waiting for this statutory instrument to be signed, and it's already taken effectively 2 years for the state to respond. This is not a great way to treat transport workers, and it's certainly not a great sign of the respect and priority that we give public transport. So I'd ask you to get back to me ASAP on that. But the key issue for people before profit here today is the question of free and frequent public transport. But we've always had a problem in Ireland when it comes to investing in public transport. At the highest level, there's been an attitude of begrudgery around state subsidies and support that we give to public transport. We know that transport emissions account for 40% of Ireland's total carbon emissions. In 2020, for example, road transport alone accounted for 94% of transport emissions in Ireland. Private cars accounted 74% of all journeys nationally, compared to just 7% by bus and rail. If we are to reach our targets on climate, it means a massive shift away from private forms of transport, including private electric vehicles. Public transport has an absolutely vital function and role in helping to keep society shift away from private vehicles to mass transit. There's a problem here, partly because of the legacy of begrudgery I spoke about, but today it's also a dearth of imagination on behalf of the government, or indeed an understanding of how important public transport is and will be in dealing with the climate crisis. Over 100 cities and regions globally have initiated free public transport for a variety of reasons, but increasingly as a climate measure. It's not an overnight solution, and we know that its impact will be limited unless we also increase massively the frequency and accessibility of public transport, not just in our towns and cities, but in rural communities. And fare-free public transport is the future, and that idea will grow. I welcome the recent fare reductions, the first fare reductions since the state in the state since 1947, and since the reductions in bus Éireann and local links last month, passenger numbers have risen by 10%. Free public transport was provided to over 66-year-olds, and we all know the enormous benefit that continues to give. The benefits of free public transport, frequent free public transport, include greater connectivity, social inclusion for the vulnerable and marginalised groups, and also the revitalisation of urban and rural areas. Such a shift is essential if we are to achieve our reductions in global gas emissions, and People Before Profit will continue to campaign for this as an issue not just on climate, but to reduce the cost of living for all.